Welcome back to the shop, everyone. This week's video takes place in 2023 week 19. That's May 8th to May 14th. And as you can see, we are starting out this video by getting this, by getting the engine pulled out. I don't know if you were really paying attention in the last video, but the ram on the engine hoist used to be black. It's now red because that's a brand new ram. And as you can see, it's actually getting the engine out of the car, which is what we need. So just by myself, I can kind of work it and pull it out. Ideally, if the car was painted, if the engine was painted and my new engine, I would likely get somebody else to help me, or I would lift it up way higher just to clear absolutely everything. I think what I might end up doing is I might actually end up cutting the chains on the leveler a bit shorter, because I don't need all of that extra height when I'm just lifting it out in my shop. It would make it a little bit easier to get a bit more clearance. And with the engine out, what I can do is I can unbolt all of the bolts for the scatter shield, and that'll also let me take the mid plate out. So with this all bolted, the mid plate was actually still on there pretty solidly, so I am going to have to do a little bit more trimming on it, but that's not really a big deal. It's just kind of making it fit. And at this angle, you can see that the chains for the engine hoist are really tight up against the scatter shield. And as soon as I, pull the scatter shield out, those two chains kind of straightened out. So what I'm going to do for when I reinstall this is I'm going to cut those tabs off of it so that they're flat and they're not hitting the scatter shield. It'll just make it so that it's a little bit nicer going back together. And here we're just getting the engine hoist ready to... or the engine stand, not the hoist, the engine stand ready to accept the engine. Now, I had this engine on this engine stand once before, but the, I shouldn't say issue, but when I had it on there before, it wasn't really, the ears weren't really set up the best way, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to loosen all of the ears off of the square plate in the middle of the engine stand, and then I'm going to attach them all to the block, and then I'll tighten them all down together so that they're all in the right area. With the engine on the engine stand, I can now drop the hoist down, get it free, and I can pull the leveler off the hoist, and I can kind of fold up the hoist and get it ready to get put back into its spot. Always got to do a little bit of cleanup if the floor's open and there's stuff on it. Yeah, so with that, with the engine hoist back in its spot, I can kind of, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I think I'm going to do some cleanup, actually. That's what it looks like. Oh, we get a visit from 47. There's my guy. So I'm waiting for a top end parts tray to come in before I really start tearing this down. But I can at least get the valve covers off and kind of see what I'm working with and do a little preliminary stuff before I really start digging into this. And of course I can also take all the rest of the stuff off the front end. I don't need, the water pump or the crank pulley or, any of that stuff installed. I don't need the engine plates installed right now, so I can take all that out in preparation for taking the heads off. I want to take the heads off. I want to take the timing chain cover off. I want to regasket it all before I put it back in the car. And the reason why I want to do that is I just want to give myself the best possible outcome when I throw some boost at it. I don't want to, blow the head gaskets out right away. This car is old. I'm pretty sure it's gotten hot once or twice. So just, throw some new head gaskets in there, throw some new gaskets at it, just make sure it doesn't leak, and just, let me break in the EFI and learn it before, we build the new engine. So as I said, I'm not really taking it all apart, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to loosen off all the rockers, just because I wanted to. So just trying to get this crank pulley off just by, using my hands. I don't really want to beat on this with a hammer or anything, but it is not coming off just my hands. So I do grab my, rubber mallet and my dead blow hammer, and comes off no problem. And yeah, from there I was just kind of thinking about what to do next. But the engine can wait. I'm going to wait for the top end teardown tray to come. So one thing that I got back into a little while ago and then out of again is the hydraulic clutch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on the hydraulic clutch again. But before I do that, I want to make it so that I can pull this bulkhead connector all the way through. So you kind of saw me do this on the passenger side where I pulled it out and then I opened up the hole, and then I could pass the entire pinned bulkhead connector back through to the other side. Well, same thing happened when this is the first one that I did, and I didn't drill the hole to the right size. So what I'm about to do now is spend the next long time, labeling and de-pinning all of those wires. And I'm doing that so that I can pull the harness back through, and then I can open up the firewall. So yeah, that's just what I'm going to do for the next long while. I have some questions on my documentation, so I am going through and I'm going to test a few of the wires. When I repin this, I will make sure that my wiring diagram is 100% accurate, and I will update it in my online Google Doc, my saved spreadsheet, so that way I don't have just things scribbled on paper. But yeah, I was just verifying a couple of things here real quick. Yes, that was a very long process and it was very tedious, but it's done and I can make it so that I never have to deepin the entire connector again. As you can see, I'm tracing the outline of the connector, and that is where I'm going to take my carbide burr on my die grinder and open that hole up too. But before I do that, I'm going to take some of that flame retardant paper. I'm going to put it on the inside. I don't want any hot pieces of metal hitting any of my wiring in there, melting any of the wiring, or just getting stuck between the wires. That wouldn't be a good thing. So yeah, put some paper in there and just protect it as best I can. And then let's modify this firewall. So there are a few places here where I didn't quite get up to the line, so it doesn't quite fit yet. So we'll do a little bit more fitment, and we'll, just sneak up on it, and we'll test fit, and we'll sneak up on it, and until it's right. All right, so as you saw there, that now fits all the way in. So what that means is that if this connector was fully pinned, I could just undo the big nut on the firewall side, and then the whole connector would fall through into the cabin. I wouldn't have to depin the whole thing. But yet I still have access to all the mounting holes. So it's what I should have done in the first place, but I didn't. Oh well, you live and you learn. It's the first time building a car, so I've been learning a whole pile of stuff. So right there, what I'm doing is I just kind of marked the center line of that hole, and I measured roughly from that line to the middle. It's 2 7/8 inch up. So knowing that, I now know when I cut that chunk of firewall out that I can, when I put a new piece of metal in there, as long as I retrace that line straight up and I go up 2 7/8 inch, I'm going to be in the rough ballpark of where I need to be for the clutch pedal to work. So before I do any cutting, I'm just going to put a little bit more of this paper on the inside, make sure all of the wires are protected. Those sparks will fly a little bit further than some of the carbide chips. Well, maybe that's not actually true. I'm not sure which will fly farther, but I'm just adding a little bit more paper in there just for good measure. And what I'm doing right here is I'm getting out some of my 2-inch cutoff discs. It's a very tight area in there, so I want to make sure that I'm not using a super big disc, which is going to nick other things. Grabbing my ear protection, and when I'm using one of these carbide burrs, I always use a full face shield. I will not ever use just safety glasses. These carbide burrs send chips absolutely everywhere. And I've had it where I'm using the carbide burr with safety glasses, and it'll actually come up under the safety glasses or up from the top. So for me, when we're working with that, it's full face shield only. So yeah, here I am starting to cut out the bottom of the firewall. You've seen me cut out metal before. This is not going to be anything new. Honestly, I'm not too sure why I was cutting this with the brake booster in place, because this would be so much easier with that out of the way. And look at that. As soon as I say that, I go and I pull it out, because why would I work with that in the way? So with the pedal box out of the way, well, I shouldn't say with the pedal box out of the way. The pedal box uses the studs from the booster to mount to the car. So with the booster unbolted, the pedal box down, I can move that booster out of the way, and I can continue cutting out this old chunk of steel. So with that out of the way, I can now grab down my hydraulic clutch. Nope, that's not right. It's my hydraulic clutch master cylinder. That's what it is. And it's not even a hydraulic clutch, it's a hydraulic throwout bearing master cylinder. So yeah, as always, just referring back to the instructions to, try and figure out how this is supposed to go in there. Turn the lights on at the back of the car. Just kind of cleaning out the car a little bit just so I can get in there. Yeah, so there's the big hole that we're going to be working with. I'm just getting the pedal box out of the way. Oh, so I'm not actually getting the pedal box out of the way. I'm moving it over to the bench to make sure I understand how this is supposed to go on. There we go. Yeah, so with that big hole in the firewall, I can kind of put the pedal box up in place and see if this is going to roughly fit as I would hope. Well, I'm grabbing some cardboard, and you guys should know what that means by now. It is template time. So tape this up to the firewall, and I'll go and I'll trace out a pattern on the inside, just so that I know what kind of piece I need to make. Yeah, so even though I have a template, I do want to get the pedal box kind of back in place. So I put the booster back in so that I can hold the pedal box in, and then I want to see if I can, with all that metal removed, I want to see if I can get this hydraulic clutch up into place and kind of where it needs to be. So yeah, I'm still having a bitch of a time getting that mounted and up into place. Had to drop the pedal box down a little bit and kind of move it around, but you can see it's kind of in place now. But the clutch pedal is still binding. I can't get the clutch pedal to move freely. So kind of moving this up, getting it more into place and trying to figure that out. So I've come around to the engine bay side just to kind of see if that's right where it's supposed to be. And, as far as I'm aware, I think it is. So at this point, I'm actually kind of frustrated that things aren't working out like I would expect. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up to do a bit of like an instructional video, because I had some video done before on installing this hydraulic master cylinder in the car when it wasn't working. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of, I know you can't really see, but I was just kind of looking at how this is supposed to mount compared to the pedal box out of the car. So I'm just doing a little bit of filming content. I figure I'm just going to leave some of this stuff like this in, just because, this is what I'm doing to build the car. So it's not exactly car building, but it's my process. So now what I'm doing is I'm just clamping the pedal box onto my bench, because I'm going to try and do a bit of a video just to kind of show what I'm running into and why this isn't working. So I got this all set up, and I bring the inside piece over to the pedal box. And of course the clutch won't go down because it's hitting the bench, because I'm an idiot and I didn't really set this up all that well. And one of the things that I realized when I set it up on the bench like that and put the piece that goes on the inside right beside the pedal box is that this should work. Like, there is so much room when I have this, like, when I'm just holding it to what I think is, flush with the firewall. There is so much room. Like, it's actually quite crazy how much room there is. And, I'm trying to figure out why it's not working in the car. Like, I'm having this moment here where I'm going to film an instructional video showing how this thing doesn't work. But when I'm holding this, like, kind of flush with the pedal box, which is, kind of where it would go on the firewall, it's all working. So when I put this in the car, it doesn't work, but here it's all working. And, I'm like, wait a second. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Okay. I'm not sure what to do now, because I think in my mind, this should work. So now I'm just reading the instructions. Yeah, I'm doing everything. This should work. There should be no reason why it's not working. So why isn't it working? But that is all the time we have for this week's video. So if you've stuck around this long, as always, I'd like to thank you for viewing, and we'll see you in the next one.